Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got a pretty interesting show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel here. So as you guys know, former NBA player JJ Redick is one of the biggest names out there in sports media, especially when we're talking about the NBA. As you guys know, he's a former three-point shooter, sniper in the NBA, had a very good career. Then he transitioned into media. After he retired, he started his own podcast, the JJ Redick Podcast, or the Old Man and the Three. I'm still trying to figure out what's the name of it. And it ended up becoming a very successful podcast. Then before you know it, he found himself on ESPN. He landed a gig there. And he did exceptionally well there. As a matter of fact, when we first heard the news he was going to join ESPN, we produced a show about it over a year ago, talking about our excitement of him joining ESPN. But since he's been on television, although he gives great in-depth analysis, what we've all discovered is that JJ is a player's guy, right? So basically, he goes on there to defend NBA players. And there have been times where he's gotten into some heated spirited debates with people like Chris Mad Dog Russo, Kendrick Perkins, and even Stephen A. Smith, right? They've had some classic blow-ups on television. But initially, when he joined the ESPN First Take crew, it was him and Chris Mad Dog Russo. And if you know anything about Mad Dog, he's a person that is from the previous era. He respects players from the past. And I think it's good, to be honest with you. I think it's good because the positions that Mad Dog takes, I believe, allows us NBA fans to learn a little bit about the history of the sport, right? He talks about players that we otherwise wouldn't discuss. And I think it's good because you then end up having a more robust understanding of the sport and all of the players that went into that played it, that created, that brought it to the present day where it is today. But a few months ago, they had an infamous blow up on television, right? And it was centered on whether or not Larry Bird is a great three-point shooter. Chris Mad Dog Russo was saying Larry Bird was one of the greatest shooters of all time. And JJ Redick was pushing back on that notion. And they ended up getting into this very, very heated back and forth. So what we want to do is just to jog some of you guys' memories. Want to quickly play that exchange of where Chris and JJ are going over, or basically arguing over the fact of whether or not Larry Bird is one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. So take a listen to this exchange here, and then we're going to come back and continue on with the show. Take a listen to that there.
James Naismith invented the game. You were rewarded for putting the ball in the basket. There's plenty of people that have shot more, made more, and guess what? Made more at a higher percentage than Larry Bird from three. I'm not saying Larry Bird is not one of the greatest shooters ever. He's not one of the greatest three-point shooters ever.
Yes,
you cannot make that argument.
Yes, I'm sorry. Because the 80s is so much different. There's physicality, the way they guarded people. You couldn't.
Can we get
Dougie, I've been trying to make a point.
Seriously,
I've been trying to make a point for you, Dougie.
Come on, man.
Well,
I've been trying to make a point. Hold on, guys.
Physicality, Jay. I mean,
hey,
you don't think that counts?
You know what? You and I are going to sit down. We're going to sit there and we're going to watch finals games from the 1980s.
Well, Jay, here's the difference.
I'm going to show you what physical basketball is versus physical fouling.
You're watching them on YouTube. I saw the games. I watched the games at the time. I watched all these games. You didn't watch. You weren't alive when these games were being played. Did you see Bird play against the Lakers in '84? Did you see Bird against the Rockets in '86? Were you at courtside watching these games? No. You got to watch the games at the time. Okay. Watching them on YouTube 40 years later is not the same at the moment.
So
watching a
let me ask you a question then. When I watch, let's say Steph Curry, for example.
Right.
When I watch Steph Curry off the ball in a playoff game.
Oh, he's great.
Getting grabbed and held by Marcus Smart. They're attached to him at all times.
Right.
Then when I watch Larry Bird come off a pin down and no one's within 5 feet of him and they're shooting the gap.
So you heard the exchange there, right? Pretty heated, and they really got into it. When JJ came out and made those comments originally, a lot of former NBA players started going at him. Because it wasn't just those comments. There was some other comments when Chris Mad Dog Russo was talking about players like Bob Cousy, and he basically said that he was playing in an era where he was basically playing against plumbers and firemen. when some of the NBA greats caught a whiff of his comments, they absolutely tore into JJ Redick. They really did. Starting from Jerry West. Think about it. Jerry West, the logo, one of the greatest, arguably the number 3 greatest shooting guard in NBA history. Some people say between him and Dwayne Wade. One of the greatest. Somebody that inspired Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Jerry freaking West. Jerry West, right? Went at him. Who else? Bob Cousy himself went at him. And a plethora of other talented NBA players from the past. Cooper went at him. They were really, really upset with what he had to say. And a lot of them took the position of, who is this guy saying this? How can he be out here saying these crazy things that he's saying? He ought to know better. He's an NBA player. How can he be saying this? And at the time, we were actually producing shows around it where I was essentially saying that, listen, man, it is a very, very bad look. A very, very bad look when you have an NBA player, a modern day NBA player, talking that way about players that paved the way for the sport. You ought to have enough emotional intelligence to know that, for example, Larry Bird is one of these guys that you just don't talk about in that way. Because had it not been for Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, there wouldn't be the NBA that we know and love today. It just wouldn't be. And when you have players of that caliber that did that much for the sport, and then you have a guy that benefited off of the foundation that these guys laid to then go up there on television and just dismiss them like as if we're just talking about any old player, you can understand why these guys were going at him. But it wasn't just some of the people that I mentioned. Just the other day, I was listening to various segments Vlad TV's interview. You know, Vlad TV, he interviews various NBA players perennially. Sometimes it's, I've seen him interview Matt Barnes. I've seen him interview Gilbert Arenas. I've seen him interview John Sally. And recently he brought in Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight reel, one of the greatest players of all time, top 75 guys. So we're not talking about a slouch. We're talking about Dominique freaking Wilkins here. One of the top, like one of the greatest ever. And they were on there talking about Michael Jordan. They talked about Scottie Pippen. They talked about why he believes some NBA players don't participate in the slam dunk. They talk about a range of things. But in this one particular segment, Vlad asked him about some of the things that JJ Redick had to say about Larry Bird on ESPN. And when it came time for Dominique Wilkins to give his thoughts, he did not hold back when he went in on JJ Redick. So what we want to do is quickly play what Dominique Wilkins had to say here about JJ Redick, and then we're going to come back and continue on with the show. Take a listen to that there.
I had Dennis Rodman on recently, and when I brought up Larry Bird, he said that if Bird was playing today, he'd be playing in Europe.
Okay, I'll put it this way. If Larry Bird played in this era, I think he'd be in Europe. His game was fit for Boston at that time in the 80s and stuff like that, but so today's world, oh, hell no. There's no way. I'm not downplaying him because he's a great player at that time, just like I was. And but I'm saying, no, there's no way. No way.
You know, I respect Dennis. A lot of respect Dennis. Know Dennis well. He's a good dude. But that's delusional. Delusional. Larry Bird could play in any era and do the same thing he did in our era. It couldn't handle him. Today's players could not handle him. Period.
JJ Redick made some comments also about Bird. He said he isn't a top 5 shooter, and he also didn't have the physicality that you have today, and you responded to that.
He's stupid. I mean, it's a stupid comment because Larry Bird played in the most physical era ever. He's 6'10", almost 6'11", and he was physical himself. To say that he wouldn't be able to play in this league because this league too physical, like, what league are you watching? Physicality is gone. It's not like it was back then. And it's nobody's fault. It's just times change. And for JJ Redick to say stuff like this, the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. And for me, I'm like this, like you guys speak your opinion, I'm going to speak my opinion. And I think it's very stupid and selfish of you to even make a comment like that. It's crazy. And if you throw enough crap on the wall, a lot of it gonna stick.
I mean, do you think it's the white boy thing? You think that just him being white, he doesn't get the respect?
I don't care what color he is. He can be blue. That's a bad man, period. Larry Bird. I tell you what, you ask any guy who played against him, I mean, guys with their right frame of mind, they're going to tell you something totally different than what some of these guys, trying to get their likes and and trying to get their social media likes up and all that stuff. That's all it's about. Because if you knew the game from the inside out, and as a player, you would never say nothing stupid as that.
So you heard what Dominique Wilkins had to say. He was basically saying that those comments were essentially stupid. Essentially stupid. And to be quite honest with you, at the time JJ Redick said that, a lot of us were floored. We're talking about a 9-time All-Star, he's been on 7 all-time All-NBA player, scoring champion in 1986, 2-time slam dunk contest winner who was going against Michael Jordan, by the way, and also a top 75 guy, one of the greatest athletes to ever play in the NBA and arguably the best in-game dunker ever. It's either him, Vince Carter, and then there's everybody else. And of course you have Dr. J and all of that, but Dominique Wilkins was, you have Sean Kemp and all of these guys, but Dominique Wilkins was absolutely incredible. So we're not talking about just any old body here or somebody that's way more accomplished, for example, than JJ Redick in his own field, right? So we're talking about a serious voice here. For him to say that what JJ Redick said was stupid, I think was 100% on the money. It was 100% on the money, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it is quite obvious. It is quite obvious that the era, the 80s and the 90s, the era in which Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and all of these guys played in was obviously the more physical era. This is not even up for discussion. Players get hard fouled. You could hand check guys. You can knock them out of the air, and guys will get into a fight. Both of them will get fouls and continue on with the game. Technical fouls and then continue on with the game. You can't even think about throwing a punch at somebody in the NBA today without being thrown out of the game. The physicality is not even questionable. You can't even compare. So for JJ Redick to say that was confounding. For him to, it's like you're spitting in the face of NBA fans and telling them it's raining. It's a joke. I even remember the audio of when Kobe Bryant sat down and was talking to Floyd Mayweather. And he was saying to Floyd Mayweather that in this current NBA, you can't even touch these mofos. For those of you guys who don't believe that, we're going to quickly play what Kobe had to say to Floyd Mayweather about the lack of physicality in this game today. And then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to Kobe here.
But I thought a protein just went over there and played another protein.
Yeah, but they do be playing some weird ass teams, right?
But over there, the rules kind of different. But listen, over there the rules kind of different. I think when the ball be like on the rim, you can like.
You can knock it off.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's what you're. That's why you know what though? They let you play over there too.
Yeah, you gotta really get fouled.
They let you play.
You really gotta get fouled.
You know, out here they change the rules up. Shit, you can't even touch them.
Right.
Don't touch them. It's crazy.
So you still traveling with him?
Yeah, got to.
So you heard what Kobe Bryant, that's Kobe Bryant. That's Kobe Bryant we're talking about here, right? So even Kobe said that. So for him to say that was laughable. Today's game is so much more softer. It's not even funny. If you factor in load management, if you factor in all of the medical facilities and all of these things, that the aids, that all of these things that these NBA teams and players have available to them, if you talk about logistics, the ease of traveling, where they charter their own planes now for an entire season, it's laughable to say otherwise. So when Dominique was saying it is stupid, folks, it's stupid. Because JJ is acting like as if he has these eyeballs that no one else has. It's like, bro, we're all looking at the same information. We're all looking at it. And he's talking about if you see Larry Bird come off a pin down and he's wide open, it means the pin down worked. It wouldn't have been successful had he not come off the pin down and he got an open shot, right? But that's what you're going to base your entire thing on, whether or not it's a more physical game. Stop. Like, let's just stop. Let's stop the madness. So for him to say that, man, I thought it was a bad look. To when you have players disrespecting the players that paved the way for them in their sport, it's embarrassing. It reflects poorly on you. On you, more so than the player that you're talking about. And that's the reason why some of the greatest players in NBA history went at him. When you have players like Jerry West and these guys calling you out, you know you did something wrong. Respect your elders, man. Come on. We got to cut it out. So these are my thoughts. What I want to know from you guys, what do you think about what Dominique Wilkins had to say? What do you think about our analysis here? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we catch you on the next show. Peace.